y'all. Welcome to another episode of the Bhangra podcast. Today we have a conversation with Umer, Sid Bandit, and Sahab Grover about the mess that was ADZ 2020's judging. We're going to be using this more as a case study as to what to do if you're judging. We're going to analyze all the various mistakes made by all parties, the judges, and the competition, and how we as a community can really prevent this stuff in the future. Also, heads up, this one's fat. Honestly, I recommend listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Overcast and not SoundCloud because you can at least speed it up a bit on those podcast players. Sid talks super slow, but he is spitting some facts, so you definitely want to hear the whole thing. Anyways, let's get into it.
Yeah.
I really got it really fast, so let's hurry up and do it. Yeah, I can take it away. So ADZ, for those of you who don't know, it's a competition that's held at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, I believe. And ADZ is a competition, for those of you who don't know, in the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It's held every single year. It's a Bhangra fusion competition, meaning that there's 8 Bhangra teams and 8 fusion teams, okay? It's held every year. So this year, the placings for this competition were first place was Ministry of Bhangra, second place was Northwestern Bhangra, which is just a collegiate team, and third place was Spartan Bhangra, which is another collegiate team. So the competition happened, just like anything happens, the competition happens, the placings are given, everything, all that stuff goes on. And after that, you have judges meetings, right? So for any new dancers out there, after a competition happens, the captains go and talk to the judges to walk through the placings, to ask questions, all of that. So after that happened, one of the teams, KPGD, they're from North Carolina, they went and had their judges meeting. And we know one of the members on the team, Kuntal, he's actually the captain of that team, and he sent us, so Umer, Sid, and myself, he sent us the judges meeting. So people typically record their judges meeting after it happens. They'll put their phone down, record the meeting so they can listen to it again later. So Kuntal sends it to us. When I get it, I'm like, okay, judges meeting recording. I've heard so many of these, I don't really want to listen to this, but I was like, you know what? I'll listen to it. Why the hell not? Sure, whatever. So I'm listening to it up in my headphones, and I'm listening to it. I'm just like, whatever. Okay, I listened to it once. I went through the whole thing once, and I kind of was just like, okay, that was whatever. And then Kuntal, I texted Kuntal. I was like, dude, what do you want me to listen? Why do you want me to listen to this? And then I listened to it again. And then things started actually really sticking out to me. I was like, what the hell? Wait, hold up. They said what? This is not how you run a judges meeting at all. So I listened to it again. I was like, holy shit, this is really bad. This is a really bad judges meeting. This is horrendous. It was cringeworthy.
Yeah, and then while Sahab was listening to this, Kuntal was basically having the same conversation with me. And I think honestly, I think Sahab, you texted me as soon as I had just finished listening to it. And so Kuntal was texting me and he was like, yo, listen to this. And I was like, dude, I don't care.
Yeah, bro. That's exactly what I was like, dude, I'm all this shit going on. I really don't want to listen to this right now. It's 12 o'clock at night. I gotta sleep. I gotta go teach in the morning. Dude,
oh
this
God.
I don't want to listen to this. Literally, that was my reaction.
It was this is Saturday night. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I was studying for my exam. I was at the library at 10 p.m. He's like, dude, I promise you, you're gonna get a laugh out of this. Just fucking listen to this.
So dude, okay, so when I listened to it, right? So when I was listening to it, there was one thing that right away, what made me first kind of maybe say yo, what the hell? That doesn't make any sense. Was some of the contradictions that the judges were saying while they were speaking and giving feedback to KPGD. And one of the judges, I don't remember which one, said word for word to KPGD, you were the most creative team of the night. Okay? So creativity is a part of the rubric. So they go and tell KPGD, you were the most creative team of the night, right? Then the scores are shown, and it shows that judge had actually ranked KPGD third in creativity. What? So this is you have 10 minutes with these judges, right? So you have 10 minutes with these judges, and you're telling the team that you're the most creative of the night, and then in the points that you're scoring these teams based off of, which is then ending up and resulting in the placings, you're placing them third. That doesn't line up. You have to be that's not honest feedback to a team, right? So they're saying the team is creative, the most creative night, and then they're scoring them lower than that. So essentially what you're saying is you're throwing away, in my mind, what you're doing is, first of all, you're just, I don't know for what reason you're boosting the team. I don't know why as a judge you'd want to boost a team for no reason. But what is that team going to get out of that when it's contradicting what you're saying on what you actually scored the team, right?
And another thing about contradictions that I know you guys have heard this at some point in time in your careers, when a judge will say, one thing and then immediately contradict it. It's like, oh yeah, your formation is really good. And they'll say two more things. And then, during your Thamal segment, the formations are actually really bad. And you sit there, you scratch your heads like, well, why did you tell me that my formations are really good? Literally 2 sentences.
That happened to us. That happened to us. That happened to us, dude. That's happened to us multiple times.
Dude, I forget what comp this was. This is like a pre-comp judges meeting, and one of the judges was just like, okay, so like we were like asking like, yo, like what kind of performance do you want to see? And the judge, I shit you not, said, I want to see something like a Bruin like performance. I was like, okay, like what Bruin performance do you think is in your eyes the kind of Bruin performance you want to see? It's like, oh yeah, I'd love to see like a 2017 KPGD or like 2018 SPD. Dude, how the like those are like the polar opposite performances I've ever heard. Like shit like that. Like don't contradict yourself immediately after talking.
We had one meeting, right, where a judge said to us, you guys just weren't memorable. But then they also told us that we had one of the best gimmicks of the night. Sid, does that sound familiar?
I'm not going to comment. It's tough.
For those of you who don't know, I think that was Sid who said that.
No, I didn't say that.
Who was it? I don't remember who it was for that.
I don't remember who it was. It was. I remember that happening. Though, and I'm thinking in my own head. I was the first one to talk in that meting, I think, or second one to talk.
Yeah, this is referring to Bruin for Thiele's 2019 performance.
See, the thing was like I wasn't me because I really stuck to because I had for Thiele at third, and I was just talking about the fact that why I couldn't pull them higher, the arguments give against me, why I couldn't pull them higher, which we'll get into, what kind of feedback you should really be saying. But no, I can't remember who said that.
It was one of the judges in the room, but I mean that's just one case right out of everything. So you did a great job judging that competition. Don't worry. So getting back on the topic, right?
Yeah, it is something along those lines, and it's I just feel like it's one of those things where if as a judge you're not taking good notes and you don't have it in your head what you watched, which means you didn't really watch, then you're just gonna ramble. Right, you're gonna say, "Oh, I love your mix. Oh, your formation is really good." This, that, and the next thing, and then all of a sudden, you might think of something that's actually productive to say that you actually remember, but it contradicts what you just said because you're just rambling because you don't really know what to say anyway.
I think just to go off of that, that point about clearly the person doesn't remember anything that happened during performance. I think that was really evident with these judges at this comp because, okay, when you first watched, I watched KPG's performance, and the first thing you see is when they start the dance set is this giant blooming flower, in the backdrop, huge. They're making this tower structure thing. It's not just a regular tower. It's like a 12-man, 16-man tower thing. And there's a blooming flower, and it's going on throughout the entire performance. If anybody's watched 2017 KPGD, you know what I'm talking about. They got stuff going on the projector that correlates with what's going on during performance. When the judges were asked, okay, creativity, blah blah blah, and Kunto's saying yo, what about the projector? Crickets. They somehow did not look at the projector. And this isn't like a tiny projector. This isn't like the Berg projector where it's 20 feet above the performance and a little tiny thing. This is a giant Bruin level huge projector that's the entire backdrop. And somehow they didn't see that. Honestly, I don't even know if you have eyes at that point. What the fuck?
I don't know if you have eyes. Holy crap. Do you guys remember? Okay, Van City posted this thing on their story one time a long time ago. It was what's that movie with where it's you can't, it's not Quiet Place. It's the movie with what's her name? Sandra Bullock or something like that.
The Bird Box.
Bird Box judging challenge.
Yeah.
That's what this was. Yeah, no, it wasn't even crickets, Umer. I remember what you're talking about. One of the judges said, "I didn't notice your backdrop." And kudos to you for being honest, but still, how did you not notice that?
Yeah, that's what you, and I wanted to piggy off of what you were saying of how to be watching that. It's all about, you as a judge. I hope were a captain at some point in time, or had something to do with choreography at some point in time. You know how much effort that takes. You know how much work goes into it. So if I walk into a meeting and they just don't notice it's one thing if they don't notice a little thing, like a small thing that might get missed, and that's my fault for not noticing it, for not making sure that the judge could see what was going on or what I was trying to do. When it comes to a backdrop, though, especially in the way that KPGD put it into their set, that's a tough thing to take in. It's like you're just not paying attention at that point, or you just don't care enough. I don't know. I don't have the right answer, but you just don't. You're just not doing a good job of taking in the entire performance, like everything that could possibly go into a performance. You're not taking the whole thing in and judging it on a holistic manner. And another thing that I noticed that was said to KPGD specifically was being compared to your prior performances, and this needs to be talked about. It's not when you say that to a team. I don't get it. You can't tell a team to create your own identity and then hose them for having their own identity. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but that's like telling Fertilia to stop doing their low claps, or I don't know what you guys call them.
Shing, 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 shing.
Yeah, and it's like telling us to not have airplanes.
The funny thing is, people do tell us that, but that's bro.
No, but no, here's the thing though. No one's ever going to tell NJ to stop doing NJ choreo that we know is NJ's choreo, and they've been doing it since 2009.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to tell SGPD to not do the heel click. Nobody's going to
No
tell
one's going to tell SGPD to not do the heel
KPGD
click.
to not put a disco ball on stage. Like, shit like that.
That's yours. It's your identity.
Yeah.
You rock it, right? We know you because of that kind of thing. And, at the same time, if we see that in another team, we're going to tell them, hey, look, we know where you got that step. But where I'm going with this is, Judge compared KPGD's drops from that night at ADZ to their prior performances. It's like, no, like you can't do that. You take what happened that night and you compare it to what else happened that night.
Okay.
Nothing to do with what happened at a previous performance.
Okay.
Taking it back to this ADZ example, what was actually said, and I'm gonna refer back to what was said in this judges meeting itself. They said, why didn't we score higher on creativity? And they said, because you've done this drop before, so we're going to dock you on points for creativity. That's what was said. And that's what, Sid, you're referring to. You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't be docking somebody's points because they did a drop at a competition before. If you want to do that, then SPD had a sup video on their Instagram that was literally very similar to what they did at Big Ten. So you're going to dock all their points because they've done that move before? You cannot dock a team. You can't hurt a team. You can provide feedback, but you can't hurt a team's score because if they did a drop before in a different set in the previous performance. It just doesn't make sense. And that kind of like ties back into
100%. Yeah, and as Sahab mentioned earlier, we did get to see the points, how they fell at ADZ, and stuff just didn't check out. As Sahab also said in the beginning, KPGD was told they got max points, the most points in creativity, but they actually got the third most points in creativity. How to score and how do you, I don't know. It's I've had arguments with people about this, and it just doesn't make sense why I can't get through to certain people, but you have to be able to use your points to back up what you're saying and what you think. Okay, you can't say that, oh, you were the cleanest team of the night and then give me the third most points in cleanliness. Then, that you're not using your numbers to back it up. Like, look, it's either one way or another, and I don't care which way it is. Either I was the third most or I was the best. Like third best or best. It doesn't matter which one it is. But you need to actually be in, align it together, make sure that it is correct. And that's why, when it comes to rubrics and, it's so important to have the rubrics properly worded so that everybody understands what's going on. What does each thing mean? That's what the pre-comp judges meetings are for, right? So that everybody knows what each section means, how it's going to be judged. And then when you're actually judging it as a judge, you're supposed to use these points to rank who was best in creativity of that night, who was second best, and by how much. Like if one team goes and they do an excellent job in creativity and the next team goes and they're slightly worse, right? Again, I'm not here to tell you how to think about Bhangra. I'm not here to impose my opinions on you. All I'm saying here is that if you think that the second team was less creative than the first team, then that team needs to have less points in creativity. Now, how much less is how much less you think it deserves to be. Am I saying this okay, guys? Are you telling me?
I want to, like, what you're saying is 100% right. And I think what you were saying is you said it before, you were saying how there's a certain group of people that this doesn't resonate with, right? And I kind of sit in a position where I understand both sides. I sit in a position where I understand what you mean by Bhangra, and what Sid is referring to, what Sid is referring to here is like there's a subjectivity to Bhangra. It's an art. It's a creative dance, right? It's not like a basketball game where there's a score of 100 to 98, and that a team A gets 100 and team B gets 98, so team A wins. It's more of an art, you know. That's what these. But I think sometimes it gets misinterpreted. That's what the scores mean. But what the scores are doing, and this is like how I've always thought about it, is the scores put objectivity to a subjective subject. And that's why they're so important, right? That's why it's very important to understand how to properly score and what does it mean to properly score a team and why those scores are important. Because I kind of use this example and just tying it back to school, right? I could be in my 10th grade English class and write this amazing 10-page essay about Moby Dick, okay? I can write this 10-page essay about Moby Dick. I didn't actually, okay? I hate writing, okay? But I could write this 10-page essay about this novel that I read, okay? Turn it into my teacher. And they give me a C. Now, in my opinion, as a subjective opinion, I said, this is amazing writing. I could even showed it to my mom. I could have showed it to my family. I could have showed it to some English professor at Harvard, and they could have said, this is amazing writing. But let's just say I turned that in, and I didn't cover the specific topics that the teacher was looking for. That's what the point of a rubric is. It's supposed to drive, it's adding this objectivity to a subjective subject, which would be writing. And that's why this writing and why we're putting so much time and effort talking about scoring and why rubrics were created in the first place. And I really want I want what I'm saying right now to resonate with those individuals who think like rubrics should be torn up and thrown away. And that I'll know what first, second, and third is just by watching the performance. Good. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. And Sahab, like, I just want to make something very clear here. I don't care what anybody's opinion is.
What do you mean?
I just want your opinion, whatever it is, to come through in your points so that everything falls correctly. Yeah. Right? Like you and I have judged together and we have disagreed. We're not going to have the same opinion. That's fine. And your points reflect exactly what you're saying. And my points reflected whatever I was saying. Right? So there's nothing wrong with that. Right? But that's exactly how it should go. I would be upset with you if you said, okay, I think team 1 should win because they were the most clean team of the night. And I'm looking at your points and you have them like you gave them less points than 2 other teams in cleanliness. Okay, well that's screwing up the point system too here. Like you're not doing it correct. You're not putting the numbers down correctly. And then because at the end of the day, you know, I understand that you can just say that and you believe that and that's fine. But just let your numbers reflect it. We need this. So, I don't know. Yeah, and it's very important. It's such a deep subject to get into.
There's nothing. You can't just sit there and watch a performance and just know what's first place. You got to have the numbers to help you rank those teams. But what happened at ADZ, and it's just tying it back to this competition. One of the judges, we actually got handed, like, just a little backstory. We actually have the scoring sheets from the competition, and one of the judges gave Mob a 97 out of 100. Okay? A 97 out of 100. Now, that means their performance was nearly perfect.
Anybody can go watch that video, and Jordan and Akash and all those guys know, captains of the team, we're not coming after you guys, but this wasn't a 97. Like, plain and simply, it wasn't a 97. And this inability to score single-handedly ruins competitions because you've ruined the average. Like, because in a competition like this, you have 3 judges. That means that you're not throwing out any scores, right? A 97 skews Mob's average so much higher than it probably should be. It doesn't matter how much normalization you want to do and mathematics you want to do, statistical manipulation. That 97 is going to carry Mob so much higher than they probably deserve to be.
And what that does, is, so you go into the judges meeting. So this is because not everyone's a judge, right? And I want people to understand what goes on behind the scenes. So then what goes on is then we are having the judges, we have a deliberation meeting after the competition is done to decide, to have we each have our own points about our placings. What happens is you go and tally up those scores, and you may see that because of that 97, Mob is now, instead of being where they truly should be, maybe 2 points ahead of the second place team, they're 5 points ahead of the second team, or 6 or 7 points ahead of the second place team. And what that does in your judging discussion is then you're like, well, if they're this much higher than them, I mean, you still can deliberate, but it skews the conversation as well. It ends up affecting deliberations.
Generally, when you're going through, you'll look at the first thing you do is if you look at the points, and first place is 5 points, and second place is like 5 points ahead of third, and then third place is like 5 points ahead of fourth. Oh, okay. You might just be like, all right, well, does anybody really have any issues with this? If not, all right, we're just gonna keep going. Like, that's it. Like that's your whole deliberation process.
It's very fast. You don't have much time. You
so
have maybe 5,
generally,
10 minutes.
like, you might only deliberate if there's like a 1 to 3 point difference, or there's like a tie, like a statistical tie, meaning okay, if there's like a 1 to 1.5 difference between like third and fourth place, it's basically a tie you should talk about.
Because, and let me just emphasize, it's because it's an average of all of the judges. Right? If the average of all the judges is only a point apart, that means the teams were super close. If the average is 5 points apart, that means we as a judging panel clearly had this team ahead of the other team.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a combination of the whole panel. It's not just me. It's not just you. It's not just whoever it is. Right? That's what those averages mean, and that's why the averages are super important. That's why the numbers are important to back up what we all saw. So if you saw that team was a 97, you're screwed. Like, look, I'm not questioning if you thought that team was a first place team, right? But that's skewing the score hard. Like, whatever the next team was, were they really? I don't remember what the scores are, but I can't remember what this judge gave like KPGD. But I'm just, in my own opinion, it's going to be very difficult for me to believe that Mob was 20 to 30 points ahead of a KPGD in what they did on that night. It's just, come on. Like, that's a huge margin.
Well, 20 to 30 point difference means that team was, 33% better, right? We're just spitting math out right now, right? 33% better, or 30% better than that other team.
Yo, nobody at this competition was 33%
and this is like
better than anybody.
What we're talking about here,
right?
And you guys are talking about is relativity. So what people do, and this is a very rookie mistake, very big, very rookie mistake. They take numbers out of context. Okay, when Sid was mentioning, like Sid, you mentioned the 97, right? You mentioned it. You didn't just say 97. I mean, I did, but you didn't just say 97 out of 100 and then not mention any other team. You said that team, not that 97, is not. They weren't like 20 or 30 points higher than another team. So what you did right there, and like what your thought process is you're adding relativity to that 97% number, right?
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, again, I don't want to, and it's not even about what I want to. I don't care what your opinion is, but the spread matters, right? And the relative spread matters. If every single team was within the 90 was within the 90s, because I would imagine, I didn't watch that many other videos, but I'm imagining all the teams within a 15-point range. That means that all the scores should have been right around 97, which you're just not going to do.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense,
right?
But like, it's just like when new teams, especially new teams, and also new judges, when they take over, they kind of missed out on that relativity portion of it, right? So I kind of like, I thought about this before we started this podcast of what relativity means in Bhangra scoring, okay? And what I want to do, and you guys, and Sid, you judged NDC with me, so you can kind of back me up, and Umer, you watched all the performances for the most part. I want to kind of take, like, so Sid and I judged NDC together, And I have the score sheets in front of me, and I want to explain to people what relativity is, right? People should understand what relativity means. So I'm taking NDC, Nutch City Cleveland 2020, okay? That rubric had a section called risk and ideas, okay? This is the risk and ideas section essentially said, this is something new. This is a risky choreography, meaning that it's complex. There's potential for failure. That's what kind of the risk section mean. I don't have it entirely in front of me, but I have the scores. Okay, so this is what relativity means. So I had BU Bhangra in the risk and ideas at this competition, a 16 out of 20. Okay, then I have DDR, who was a 17 out of 20. Okay, for the risk and ideas portion. So what essentially happens is what I'm saying. What did those scores mean? I'm saying that BU had the second riskiest set. So when I went into that judges meeting with them, I said, you guys had one of the more riskier sets of the night. You were up there in probably the highest amount of risk in your set. And I would tell them that DDR had them beat out, in my opinion, for A, B, and C reasons. Okay. So I think I said DDR had DDR did the worm in their set. So I was like, that's risky. Like, that's a risky thing to do in a Bhangra set. Like, BU did like the hurricane, which is like a breakdancing thing, not the coffee grinder, but hurricane. That puts them up there. But DDR had some more risky parts, which then allows me to have relativity. Then I had maybe another team, and I'm going to give this as a reference. Just keep talking about the risk and idea section. I had MBT. Okay. MBT didn't have much risk and ideas. So and relative to BU, I gave them an 8 out of 20 for the risk and ideas portion. Okay? So when I go into the meeting with MBT, I can go and explain to them, relative to these other teams, you had one of the least risky sets. Okay? And this is why. This is what these other teams did better than you, and this is why you scored here. Okay? So that's what relativity means. And now this rubric, I'm gonna go a little bit deeper into this, because I mentioned those three teams. Yeah, what's up?
Real quick, Sahab, let me highlight one thing. I want everybody to just know that what Sahab did there just now, he compartmentalized that one part of the rubric and judged teams to each other, right? That's the key. It's not necessarily about the numbers, but to each other, how were they comparatively, right? DDR was slightly more risky than BU. MBT was significantly less risky than those two.
Yeah,
is that correct? Right?
Exactly.
And that's exactly right? Yeah. And that's the key right there is the numbers reflect that. And it's proper. If MBT was a little more risky, they probably would have gotten a 10 instead of an 8. Right? It's just whatever actually happened that night, that's what you got to do is make sure that those scores are relative to each other, especially in the margin
and the very
in
important
between.
thing, Sid, you talked about compartmentalizing the rubric. Another part of that rubric was dancing. Okay? And in that dancing section, okay, I'm just going to pull this up. So in that dancing section, the funny thing is MBT actually scored the highest at this competition in the dancing section relative to all the other teams. So to give you some numbers, so BU had the riskiest. So this is why compartmentalizing is important, because I can actually then tell the team what they need to improve on I can tell them what hurt them, and then also what they need to improve on to score better on this rubric. Just highlighting what I just said. Score better on this rubric.
Yeah.
Okay.
And speaking freely here, and we told MBT that we were like, guys, like dancing is absolutely. You guys won in terms of dancing aspects of the rubric, but the rubric doesn't value that as much as it valued choreographical elements, risk elements, creation elements. Had you guys done a few more things, you're placing in this comp. You actually bring a risky set with this level of dancing, you win this comp, kind of, but that's what is just as like Sahab said, we have the points to back up, like, hey, you guys were the best dancing team of the night. The reason you guys didn't place today is because you had one of the worst sets of the night comparatively to everybody else. Yeah,
so that's like the important part of the scoring and how to properly score. And now for those people who say, well, I know what's number one. I know what first, second, and third. Like, I know what first, second, and third is without looking at a rubric. This is why a rubric is important. Okay, we're gonna kind of talk about Bhangra knowledge and the Bhangra knowledge portion now. So those people who do say I know what first, second, and third is by just watching, they're basing it off their knowledge and their experience. which is okay. I get that. You're basing off of knowledge and experience. But what that knowledge and experience is supposed to be used for is your understanding how to know what is risky and what's not risky. What is proper choreography thought process, what's not proper choreography thought process in relation to what's written in the rubric. That's where your knowledge actually comes into play. So if I was an inexperienced person, right, and I didn't know anything about Bhangra, or I never made a set, right? I was just a dancer on team. I've never made a set. I've never been part of I've never captained a team, or I've never been part of that thought process of creating a set. I wouldn't know how to properly judge risk and ideas because I wouldn't know how to score. I wouldn't know that DDR was more risky than BU, or I wouldn't know that MBT had no risk. And also on the flip side, talking about the dancing side, I wouldn't have known that that MBT had the best dancing if I wasn't experienced enough to understand that. That's where that Bhangra knowledge comes into play, right?
Yeah, and so like what we're not arguing is like, oh yeah, like we're not saying like anybody can judge. No, for fuck's sake, no, not everybody should be judging. But you need to have that background. You need to have that background in order to be able to concisely, like, give that proper feedback and apply that feedback and all that knowledge into the point. If you're not able to word that, if you're not able to apply those points properly, then you're being a trash judge. And I think that's what gets lost. It's just like, oh no, like, yep, I should just be able to tell.
But really, like, we're talking about understanding of Bhangra, bro. You guys know what happened, right, with ADZ's bug thing?
No.
Dude.
Yeah.
That was bad.
Go off, sis.
I mean, that's the next part of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. So yeah, I mean, what happened at ADZ was, so they had an issue where one of their dancers stopped dancing because their bug was loose, went off stage, took their bug off, and then came back on stage 30 seconds later. Okay? In the Bhangra circuit, you do not place a team first place when their bug comes off. It's kind of an unwritten rule, so I'm glad we're able to talk about it here. It's an unwritten rule that it's just not stated, but when a bug comes off, you just don't place that team first place. And an example that happened is actually in the UK, University of Birmingham, at the Bhangra Showdown 2016. One of their dancers, this team, just as a backstory, this team is ripping this set. It is a flawless performance, no mistakes.
Honestly, I'll link that performance in the show notes. It's fucking phenomenal.
It's a great performance. It was an amazing performance. In the ending segment, one of the dancers' bugs came off. Automatically, that team got second place. Automatically, they got second place. They were literally just essentially, they said when your bug came off, it's second place. And the other problem that happened, and you can talk about this, Umer, but dude, how many points were taken off?
All right, listen.
By one of the judges?
Okay. The annoying thing is, like, I judged with one of the judges at this competition the previous year at this competition at ADZ, and like we had this discussion where it was like, yo, dude's bug fell off last like 30 seconds. This team probably would have placed, but yo, we got to take -5 off, right? Everybody's like, yes, nods, right, for -5. Cool. Ended it. Discussion over. This year, one of the judges from last year is also on this panel this year, and I look at everybody's points for mob, and what do I fucking see? Dude, like, one of them gave him -1, one of them gave him -2, one of them gave him -3. Like, dude, like, you know this. Like, every single one of those judges, I'm pretty sure has, okay, one of the judges was a captain, another judge, I don't know who she was, and then the other person has danced a lot. Like, you know a bug falling off is -5. So how in the world do you justify a -1?
Come to some level of defense here. I think we've been lucky enough, outside of the UK example that you just rambled off, Sahab, that we haven't seen anything like that in recent memory, where, you know, teams a first place team, and then the bug comes off and they're just automatically out of contention. It's happened in the past. Whenever I was
it happened to them. Yeah, Boston.
It happened to Fertile.
Okay, so here's where I'm going with it. Like, we haven't seen any controversy around it. Right, and I think this is probably a big, you know, maybe a proponent of why we really need to reignite BTF here. When this would happen in the past, that was 20 comments worth of a thread. Man, if the bug doesn't come off, you guys are easily placing. when I'm as a young dancer, I'm obviously reading this and learning that this is like what it means in terms of judging. Like I already know the Pagh is an important thing. Like it's an important piece that is worn on a daily basis. It has meaning. But what does it mean in Bhangra? I learned via reading all that stuff, right, and talking to people and understanding even over the course of time, and being a younger team when you don't have bug tires properly, doing stuff, your own team gets wrecked. I learned it over time. I'm not sure if any of these dancers ever encountered a situation or even know about a situation that what to do in that kind of situation, right? Because we talk about, as you said, it's a perfect way to say it, Sahab, is an unwritten rule, right? There's unwritten rules in every single sport. And same thing here. This is an unwritten rule of Bhangra. Like you have to have a team that is 20 points ahead of every other team. If they have a bug come off, like maybe you can talk about first place. But I would be so hesitant to give that team a first place. You know what I mean? Like, and again, I know this one judge had Mob at a 97, but that's what it was tough for me just to watch that happen. It's like, no, it's like you just don't do that. It's an unwritten rule of Bhangra that team that has a bug come off, like they're not winning. And
it sets a horrible precedent. That's the problem. Like, as a judge, and Sid, like Umer, you guys, when someone gives you feedback as a judge, you take that to heart, right? Because they're judge, they showed their experience or their knowledge of Bhangra, like they understand
or lack
it,
thereof.
right? You take what they say for the most part, except when they don't know what they're doing. You take what they say to heart. So what happens when a judge goes to a competition and places a team first place that didn't have a bug come off? It starts becoming like, oh, that's devalued. It's not. It's okay. That's okay for a bug to come off. That team can still win. No, that's not how that's not how that rolls. It's not how it works. And I actually want people to hear that because, especially new dancers who don't know anything about Bhangra, they come in and they see that mob performance. They don't even care if the bug came off or not. No, you got to realize that bug coming off is a big deal. It's a very big deal.
100%. And another thing that happens and happened in this meeting is when we talk about knowledge and understanding of Bhangra is verbiage and step names. I understand that maybe you may have had a captain that learned a certain way, but if you're going to be judging, call the step names what they should be called, not like up legs and triple taps and whatnot. Honestly, if it was me, I would even when I was a younger dancer, I wouldn't have known what that meant. Like, which triple tap are you talking about? And at one point in time when I was doing legs, where I was picking up my legs, because I'm picking up my legs the whole set, what does up legs mean? Like squats, I get. I understand when someone says squats, but why are we not saying Tamal? And it's weird to me. And why are you not calling it Jandu Singha?
Yeah, why aren't you not calling it Jandu Singha? Like, how do you not know that?
Yeah.
If you're a Bhangra judge, I get it if you're first time dancer, but if you're a Bhangra judge, you don't know what Jandu Sangha is? Like, you're just gonna call it triple taps?
And I get it. There's also certain steps that you just don't know what the names are, right? And because the reality is,
dude, there's so many of those, man. But I end up making up names for them. But you have to. And there's Fulkari, there's Fulka. We've had that discussion with people. Pataka, Shisha. There's like different names for everything like that. But what I do, my little trick is learn a little bit of Punjabi. When someone is clapping, that's a thadi. So anytime then what you do is you just morph the name. You can keep it the same like name, but just add a Punjabi word in there. Then everybody thinks it's that's the trick, man. That's what I learned. That's what I do when I'm teaching. If I don't know the name, I'm like, oh yeah, that move is Punjabi. It's called a tadi Punjab. Yeah, that's what.
But this is the reality, man. All the Ustad at some point in time just gave it a name, and like I get it for some of that, but there's certain things that you should just know.
Okay, so we're talking about so you just Sid, you're talking about you're gonna go in and judge, right? And I kind of talked about this before. One of the most important parts is everything. It's kind of weird. Our whole conversation, just taking it from the beginning, is all based off of this judges meeting. So it kind of shows you the value that judges meeting can have. And I think one of the important things that it's that time is for you to properly give feedback to that team, right? Instead of just handing them a bunch of scores, you can actually explain to the team why they placed using the rubric.
Yeah, and
that's the important part of judging. You have to understand that.
The thing with it is, guys, is you have to be able to tell the team why they placed where they placed using the rubric. Okay, so I don't care if a team got sixth. I don't care if a team got second. You just have to tell them, like, hey, look, this is. If you don't want to tell a team where they placed, that's on you. They're probably going to ask you where they placed. So I don't really have any problem telling a team where they placed. Like, what's wrong with honesty when they're going to get the points anyway? You have to be able to tell a team why they placed, where they placed, using the rubric, and it ties back into what we talked about, how to score. Because you can tell a team, again, hey, you were pretty decent in this area, but you weren't good here, and that's what brought you down, and stuff like that. Especially when it comes to the second and third place teams, why didn't they get first? You want to be able to use the specific parts of the rubric where they lacked in comparison to that first place team, so that they have actionable feedback to go back and say, this is why we didn't win on this night, right? And especially when it comes to especially the second and third place teams, like you guys have been in these shoes, and any team out there that has tasted some success has been in these shoes. If you're not getting the answers as to why you lost, you just walk out like pissed off, right? And if you don't get answers of where I was lacking and why I didn't, or if when we used to get quote unquote fourth place, why weren't we actually placing? And it's just your mix was really good and I liked your formation. Like, I don't care. Like, that's useless information. Saying you like my mix does not help me in any way, shape, or form, right? Saying my formations were really good doesn't help me in any way, shape, or form. Okay, which gets me to my next point is. When you're talking about a team set, you have to give actionable feedback, which goes back to what notes you're taking and being able to break down the set, right? So if you're going to sit there and say, okay, I liked your formations, well, tell me what I did good, right? If you didn't like my formations, tell me what I did bad. If you didn't like it, if you didn't like something, tell me why. Like, it's not just like, oh, well, so-and-so was off, this was off, I liked your mix. Like, that, don't tell me that. Okay, during this segment, here's what happened, and here's why it didn't hit, right? And it could be anything. Like, and you guys know it can be anything that caused a certain thing to just not hit, right? For example, it could be the way a team sets up a drop. Like, they're about they're build up, and they just all of a sudden drop into like a jaw, and the flow about the way they're moving their feet doesn't check out, right? And all you need to say to them, hey, look, at that point when you dropped into that step, it didn't hit and it didn't work. And what I think you need to do is add formational movement that leads into the drop so that when you hit the drop, it doesn't look awkward. That's actionable. And that's an actual thing a team can take back and actually change their set so that part, when the next time they perform, will actually hit. That also teaches a team how to think about their choreography. Like, when we hit any drop now, does it flow? Or are we going to get this same comment again? Does that make sense, guys? Is this all checking out? Yeah.
No, yeah.
No, it doesn't make sense to me, Sid. I'm joking. That makes complete sense, man. Like, I didn't understand. It took me, and this is not me talking about personal experience. I like this podcast because I can actually talk about some like personal experiences that I had up until I started dancing in 2012 with the Michigan Bhangra team. Okay. I started dancing in 2012. I did multiple judges meetings in between that time. The first time I actually got actionable feedback was Blowout 2016 when Ankush, Trag, Ashita, and Sid, you judged it. Dude, before that, no one... Oh, sorry. And I did get some actionable insight. Sorry, before that. Sorry, Kunto, I will give you some time as well. You also did give us some actionable feedback at Nashville in 2015. But those 3 years from 2012 to 2015, no one ever told us any of these things that you told us, Sid, which is what you just mentioned. And the second I heard that, it improved our set design and our execution and our choreography and our creativity so much because it gave us something to work with. The judges didn't just come and say, which is what they used to do before, and these other ones, they're like, I didn't like this, I like this, I didn't like this, that guy was off, that guy sucked. Like, that's what they used to do. Okay, what the hell, you want me to drop this guy? I mean, like, first of all, tell me what's off about this person. Like, you can't just say that shit. Like, you want me to just drop a dancer? Okay, like, that's how it works. But that actionable insight, it's very important because as a judge, that's why you're not just, and I put this on all my applications. Sorry, I don't mean to get off topic, but I put this on all my applications. My job is, yes, to judge the rubric, but also to provide.
And I want to give another example here of MBT. Right. At some point in time when I judged them, they did a drop, and what I would imagine happening is, the judge would say, this drop didn't hit, right? And that's it. That's all that would happen. The judge, this drop didn't hit. Not why, right? It just didn't hit. Or they'll say something like, the guy in the middle wasn't executing properly, right? Neither of those statements are wrong. Okay, but those statements are not actionable because it doesn't actually tell you what was wrong or why it didn't hit. You know what I mean? So the way you should be saying it, and what I did to MBT that one time was, okay, you had this one guy. I think it was Pink. I don't know. And let's just say it was Pink guy was in the middle for the jaw drop, and the reason that it didn't hit is because number one, he is the highlight and he is not executing it correctly. His feet were inside of his knees. Now, you guys all know what that looks like in a chawler, right? When someone's doing chaw and the feet are inside their knees, it just looks weird. It's also just not proper form, right? That's why that drop didn't hit.
Like
you teach him to have his feet outside of his knees like all 11 other people had it. All of a sudden, everything looks right. This is a perfect drop. Right? That's another example of, don't just say, oh, Pink guy was off. Say why he was off. And that also goes back to when you are taking notes. Yeah. Don't just write Pink guy is off, write Pink guy off, jaw, legs, feet inside knees, right? Because you can then reread that, right? Before you talk to MBT, you can reread that and remember what happened because you actually wrote it down,
Dude. Yeah, and I to remembering. I don't listen. I personally think it is a valid critique to say, yo, I just didn't remember much from your performance. But you can't just stop. You can't just literally say, yeah, I didn't remember anything, and then just sit down and lay back and give him a stare and a shrug, being like,
That's actually what happened in the ADZ judges meeting.
Yeah. Dude, listen.
With KPGD. That's exactly what happened.
When you say that, you can say, listen, the reason I don't really remember it is because this happened, where you can say, listen, there were 3 people in the back that were floating around, not really sure what they're doing, so my attention focused to them, and so I'm not remembering your drop. I'm remembering, they're fucked up 5 times in the back. I don't. What am I supposed to do? That is an actual feedback. You can say listen, I don't remember what happened because the build up just honestly didn't really hit. You can say, oh, the mix really didn't didn't match with what the choreo was doing, so it didn't stick out as a memorable moment to me. Those are actionable things you can give to a team. But just sitting there and saying I couldn't remember anything sucks. Fuck you. Yo, honestly, if you are not, then you need to go back as a judge. You need to take better notes. And if you're not taking better notes, if you're not remembering what the teams are there, that's literally your job. If you aren't remembering what the teams did, why the fuck are you even there?
One thing that I know that has happened whenever a team comes through and they got really low points for me on creativity and they didn't really do anything entertaining, this all goes back to your notes, right? Okay, every single time someone's doing something, at least for me, I'm writing down what's going on. If I'm not writing anything, that means that there's your feedback. It's hey, you did this entire Thamal segment and you guys just did basic Thamal steps and nothing was entertaining. You weren't bouncing your shoulders. It was just blah. But I write that down. That's what you should be saying. Not, I don't remember anything. It's okay, I remember you did a Thamal segment and it was just whack because you didn't do anything creative. You didn't do anything entertaining, and you weren't bouncing your shoulders. So and so's legs were not getting high enough. You have things to write down, and that's what you should be saying. Not that I don't remember anything.
Yeah. So I'm hearing all this stuff, and this whole time, right? And guys, we've been talking about this this case study of ADZ, right? What I want people to take away from this is not that ADZ was shitty judging. I'm actually glad it happened. Okay, I'm sorry, Kuntal. I know you're probably why though? All those teams who didn't play were yo, Sahab, why would you even say that? But I'm glad something like this happened because it gives us an opportunity to speak to younger generations, older generations, and to a wider audience, and how to tackle this issue and actually how to be a better judge. Because I'll be honest, dude, I didn't know when I was a first-time dancer back in 2012, 2013, judging was so important. Judging was such a high, it's such a high honor to judge a competition and that everybody wants to do it. I was oh, I might judge a competition if someone asks me, but now it's getting more to the forefront. And we want people to take away a lot of what's being said here is, okay, if I go and judge a competition, how do I do it? How do I do a good job, right? And one of the first things, and we didn't touch upon this too much, And one of the things I learned first was you have to understand that rubric that you're judging to. You, even regardless of how much Bhangra knowledge you have, how many first places, second places, how many times you've placed, and how great your Bhangra team is, how creative a choreographer you are. You need to understand the rubric you're judging to. Right, Sid? Sid, I remember the first time I judged with you, and the first time I was sitting there, and you were telling me you have to read this, dude. You need to know what all these words mean.
100%.
And how to interpret this and to score.
The key thing there, and I might not have said that, or maybe I did say it to you whenever I did.
I don't know if it was you or somebody else, but I definitely.
But it probably was me, and because I say that to anybody that is a new judge with me. The key is that when you are watching a performance, you're watching it. You should be watching it through the lens of this rubric, right? So understanding what the verbiage is and what it means and how it's meant to be interpreted, and then you are watching this and being able to then think as you're watching about the rubric too, if that makes sense, right? Being able to interpret what you're watching via the rubric as your guide allows you to actually score properly and be able to then talk to the teams properly via this rubric, right? The rubric is the playing field of the competition, right? But as you said before, this is an art, right? It's just whatever we create. There's no rules to what you can and can't do, technically. Some people might say otherwise. But that's the whole point of the rubric, is to give the teams coming to that competition, hey, this is our rubric, here's our playing field, right? We're going to get the best possible judges to interpret these rules to watch what you guys have created based on here's your rubric, right? So as a judge, understanding the rubric and every single word that's in there is key to being able to watch a performance. Because again, teams are preparing for this rubric. They can't read your mind. They don't know everything about you. They don't know your upbringing in Bhangra. Because at the end of the day, your resume doesn't truly tell anybody everything about how you think about Bhangra, right? That's why the rubric is there, to give it some sort of objectivity, some sort of playing field. And so as a judge, you have to know this, and as you're watching it, then you can go back and score and be able to talk to the teams through the rubric.
I do want to curve this conversation a little bit. Sahab, walk me through what Sid and Kunto were doing when they were quote unquote training you.
They did nothing, bro. I learned everything on my own. I don't know what they did. I'm joking. They helped me out a lot, honestly. Sid and Kunto helped me out a lot as first time judge. So, I talked about earlier about if you're a new judge, what do you want to do, right? To be a good judge. And one of the things that Kunto, actually before I even got to the competition, what I used to do was I actually messaged people in the circuit who judged me before, and I have heard good things about. So I sent a message to Ridda, she is a captain of Shan Muttiyanadi, which is SMD, one of the greatest, one of the best Bhangra teams of all time, right? You can put them up there. So I actually messaged her because I knew she used to judge us at competitions. I got some actually feedback and advice from her on how to properly judge and how to read a rubric and that whole experience. But what Sid and Kuntal did when I got there was they sat me down in a room. Okay, they sat me down in the room, in a hotel room, and they played two videos. One was a KPGD video, one was an FCB video. Okay, videos I've never seen before. They told me to go and judge that performance to the rubric, and then have a judging meeting with them. And I got my shit wrecked. I got my shit wrecked when I was doing that. I had no clue what I was doing. Not that I had no clue what I was doing, but I got my shit wrecked. I had a judges meeting with them, and Kunto pretended to be angry, or not angry, but upset with the placings. And he showed me what that experience was. And then on top of that, when I would give them feedback, they would reference back to the rubric. So it was giving me practice on how to score properly to that rubric, and then also giving me practice on how to give feedback. Because I had that preparation, I didn't shit the bed completely when I went and judged NDC. I had that little bit of a warm-up period to go and judge that competition. It's very important, and it's a very serious matter. These teams are spending a lot of time creating these sets that you need to be prepared. It's a very important responsibility. So that's what they did with me. At first I was like, oh my God, I have to do all this shit. Why? I didn't realize how much work it was going to be. But then I was actually coming out of that, I was very appreciative of it. Because now whenever I go and judge, I actually do this anytime I judge a competition. I go and take the rubric and I watch a random video that I haven't seen and I judge it, maybe 2 or 3 videos. It gives me a warm-up period. to get into it and like actually get into proper judging. And I actually really appreciated that I, you know, it's like something that you have to practice. It's not going to just come naturally to anybody. And that was a great practice for me. So that was kind of my story about how I got into, or how I learned all of this stuff about judging and what are the do's and don'ts. I'm going to be honest with you. I do not think that the judges who judged at ADZ took any time to do this at all. I think 80% of people who go and judge a competition don't do this. And when I mean 80%, I mean 80% of new judges. Just throwing an arbitrary number out there, but I truly believe that a majority of people do not take the time and actually practice it. And I preach it. Like, it's very important that you do that and that you practice your judging before you go and judge your first time. It will help you so much. Like
Sid said, like, practicing before really gets you in the mind and the frame to judge the competition through that rubric. Like, we've all watched Bhangra plenty of times, but have you sat down with a rubric in front of you? Have you timed yourself going through a performance, giving yourself only like 3 minutes before the next performance, and then typing everything out under that time pressure, under that like level of stress, typing all your thoughts out, doing it live, and then assigning points very quickly and then moving on to the next performance? Like, that is a skill. That is something that needs to be practiced. And so
yeah, it definitely is a skill, man. I mean, it took me time. It took me a competition, and new judges, you're not going to be perfect, man. Like, you're human. It's a new thing. You're like, it's not like your first performance you ever did on stage, you're perfect. But it's important that you practice beforehand and that you make sure you do all the prep beforehand. You're treating it like a responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's my advice. It's really funny. Sid, do you remember at NDC what I'd always say to the teams at the end? You know, you guys would always be like, "Oh yeah, just message me." And then what did I do? I was like, "No, FaceTime me." And people actually did. And I helped them out. People actually FaceTime me. And I was like, damn, I'm taking initiative. So, I mean, I'm putting myself out there. If you want some help and training on how to judge, I'll put myself out there. Say, FaceTime me. I'll help you out.
Amen. I mean, and we've talked about this endlessly, or said this statement endlessly. Reaching out to anybody that you want to get feedback from, I've never, ever heard of someone being like, nah. So definitely reach out and you know.
Yeah. So that's very important, and it kind of something that I wanted to talk about too as a judge. You got to be professional in a judges meeting, and this is something that's gonna happen. Like, dude, so you've been in judges meeting, you've been just pissed, right? Like
yes,
upset.
Dude, I've been in a judges meeting where the team was so mad they didn't even send their captains. They just sent like, I don't even know who, just like some random dancers from the team just to record what we said, and then they just left. I was like, oh, fuck. They're clearly so pissed. They were so bad they didn't come, and they sent their scrubs. Like, what do you want me to do?
Maintain professionalism. And why I maintain professionalism and why I'm saying this is because I heard in this ADZ judges meeting, the judges in that meeting let their professionalism slip completely. And one of the judges started mocking the team and the captain. And you have to, if you're going to judge, you have to be patient and you have to be patient and understanding of that team. Put yourself in their shoes. So if they come at you upset, don't be like, yo, fuck those guys. Who the fuck do they think they are? Sit in their shoes and understand. And be empathetic of it, and don't lose your professionalism.
We have all been in the situation when you are pissed about a placing. God knows if anybody's heard of stories about me. Yeah, I get pissed as fuck when I get second place.
So you get mad a lot?
Yeah, nah, just sometimes. just like once in the blue moon. As I storm out of Bruin, fuck this, fuck that, oh my. Nah, but I mean, in all honesty, like, listen, we've all been mad. We've all been mad coming into a judges meeting. Like, God knows I squeezed the fuck out of, like, I think I broke Sagar's fingers a few times as we were, like, sitting in a judges meeting, just, like, grabbing his hand and squeezing it as somebody's, like, fucking talking to me. Like, you've been there. We've all been there. But the thing is, they're, like, the dancer's allowed to be mad. They have full right to be mad. They should be mad. You can't. You know, unless they're like being like complete assholes towards you and like calling you names and shit. That's one story. But I mean, like, you are there. You're hired. You were flown out. You were or you should like you were flown out. You were paid your hotel.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah. But like a lot of
are now actually hired.
a lot of comps are like, we'll fly you out. They'll pay for your hotel room. They'll pay for your lunch. You were like, maybe you're not like given $5, like $100, but you were paid. You were paid to be there. So act like it.
So that's kind of like, segueing us back into like what comps need to do, right? Okay, so we talked about, now if you're a judge, really listen to that and actually take it to heart what what all of us just said, because it's very important. It's what makes you a good judge. Being a good judge is different than being a great creative choreographer. They're two different things. Okay, so what we just said is all about being a good judge, but the thing that I actually hear a lot, right, about this whole comp process of picking judges is applications. I never saw this. I have never seen this before until starting like 2016, 2017. Competitions started releasing applications for their judges, right? So like what you do is you go to a Google form, you answer some BS questions. I'll be honest, they're BS 90% of the time. It's like the question is, what do you value in Bhangra?
I hate that question so fucking much.
Dude, why the hell would you even ask me that question? What I value in Bhangra is what's important on that rubric. I'm judging to your rubric, not what I value. So I'm very confused. That's different though. But teams started doing applications, right? Competition started doing applications. And in those applications, you have to vet them. You have to really vet them. You need to have a little bit of an understanding of Bhangra to enable to properly vet these applications and know who these people are. I saw this, and this is not to call out Bhangra and the Berg because they probably don't know any better, but I saw Bhangra and the Berg say that the executive board for their competition doesn't need to have any Bhangra knowledge. But they said in their application, if you're an executive board, what does that mean? That means the director of a competition, the director, the treasurer, all these things doesn't need to have Bhangra knowledge. Meaning they don't need to know anything about the circuit.
Dude, listen, that is the most bullshit statement I've ever heard in my entire life. Like,
you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to have some sort of semblance of Bhangra knowledge, because if you don't, judges can just fucking lie, or potential judges can just lie to your face about what competitions they've done and all the shit that they've done in the circuit, which we have seen, and I have seen on multiple people put out there on their resumes, that that they'll say that I was captain of this team, I danced at this and this, I have 16 years of Bhangra. A 21-year-old said, or I think a 20 or 21-year-old said, I have 16 years of competitive.
Dude, I don't care what you did when you were 5. I don't care what you did at 10.
Yeah, I deadass know that person did not have 16 years of competitive Bhangra experience. Okay,
doing Bhangra in your uncle's basement, like when you're 8 years old, like, and as he's like trying to like walk you through what a tamal is, like that's not what we're talking about. I don't care what you did at 5, 10, 15. I mean, whatever. Like, I want to know what you did in the circuit. I want to know where you've competed. Yeah. I want to know what teams you've led. I want to know who you've taught. If you haven't done that shit, the fuck are you doing there?
Yeah, you can't. You can't just put random numbers on there, because again, this is a responsibility. So you can't just put random like facts or random tidbits that don't make any sense and are lying. And this is but yeah, it's now this is getting me to, and Sid, Umer, I've talked about this quite a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, judging, it's not for clout. Okay, if you're gonna come in, and I apologize to anybody that I don't apologize if I get this heated. Judging is not for clout. What I am seeing right now in the circuit is people are saying, the reason they want to judge is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go judge. Why do you want to judge, bro? Like, everyone's doing it. Or I want to be able to post on my Instagram that I'm judging this competition, so that I can get my name out there and be the cool person at that Bhangra comp and go hook up with people. That's literally some of the reasons why people are judging in the circuit. Dead ass. And judging is not a clout thing. Okay, I see this bullshit about like, congratulations. Look, congrats to my friend that they're judging this competition. Congrats. Judging is a responsibility. Okay, it's a very important responsibility. Okay, you're going to judge a competition. Okay, your job isn't done when you get selected. Your job ends when you get the proper results out to those teams. That's when your job is done. And you need to take it with that seriousness. It's not about clout. It is not about doing this. This shit is not about, oh, look at me, how many competitions I've judged. Yo, fuck that, man. You think senior judges in the circuit keep count of how many fucking competitions they judge? No, because they have a different mindset. When I came in to judging, I had like a thought process behind it. I said I want to judge Bhangra, number one, because I want to be able to know that the knowledge that I have gained over these past 5, 6, 7 years doesn't just go to waste. That's why I wanted to judge. I said I want to ensure that Bhangra is not following trends that are counterproductive, or Bhangra is following the wrong trends. That's why I straight up dead ass was like, I need to judge, because I want to do these things. I had a very deep reason behind it. And if you're someone in the circuit and a current dancer, before you go and judge, go and apply, ask yourself why you're doing it. Find that reason, that deep reason. Not that I just want to judge so I can post on my fucking Instagram. And like that's bullshit. It's complete bullshit. I hate it. I hate seeing it. It deteriorates the reason for judging. Okay?
Dude, I mean,
it deteriorates the reason for judging. And I've just been it's irked me because I've seen it over the past year and a half. It's just
I'm with you, man.
It eats at me because those people aren't asking the right reasons. They're not doing it for the right reasons. And the right reason is what's going to make you be the person to actually go out and say, I need to get trained to practice judging and take it to that level of seriousness.
And I want to say that the most fulfilling part for me of judging, and just as you said, I mean, I didn't start doing it for clout. I wanted to do it because, and I think it's a right reason for a lot of people to want to start doing it, is if you've ever felt like you never got good feedback, if you felt like the results might not have been right. We've all felt both of those things.
I remember the moment I wanted to learn how to. So this was what was Berg 11? Whatever year that was. Judge straight up fucking said to me, "Yeah, I don't really judge to a rubric. I just kind of look at the performance and then apply the points later." Like, yo, fuck you, man. Like that right there, I was like, all right, I need to judge because this guy needs to fucking get the fuck out of here.
As I was saying.
I was like, what the fuck? I was like, holy shit, okay.
Yeah.
I knew Umer was going to toss that in somewhere.
I
Okay.
had to.
Yeah,
I had to. Sorry.
Yeah.
Continue.
That's one thing. But, I got into it, and because for those reasons, I wanted to help teams, because I was always in a situation where I didn't grow up in Bhangra having an ustad.
Same.
BTF and YouTube videos and whatever Harman would bring back from Punjab, or whoever would bring back from Punjab, was my ustad, right? It's a combination of all this information. And the one that you could actually talk to was the judges. And when the judges weren't, they really just didn't, they weren't helpful. They weren't productive. And it wasn't until I really sat down with, I asked two judges. I was like, hey, can you just talk to me for 30 minutes and really explain this stuff to me? Because, it's been a long time. You've judged us a few times. You're saying the same things. Obviously, we're not understanding what you're telling us. Can you help me out? And thankfully that, two judges did that for me. And it absolutely changed everything. And, and I'm not here to rag on them.
You were that person for me.
Yeah. And I'm not here to rag on those guys for what they did inside the judges' meetings. Because, they were saying the right things, but it just wasn't clicking for me. And the moment that I understood what they were saying, I was like, okay, that's what that means. And then all of a sudden, after those meetings, guys, like FCB finally became successful. Yeah. And where I'm going with it is that whenever I was able to communicate with teams the way that those judges communicated with me, and then you go and you watch them do good, and you see that they're applying what you say, it's so fulfilling. Right? It's like, it's so fulfilling to watch that happen. And that's why that's why I do it, right? Because I want to see other teams do well, and watching them do well after having, given them feedback, actionable feedback. It's fulfilling, man. It's so much fun to watch, and it's something that, sticks with you for a long time.
Yeah. So yeah, and another thing is, Sid, that you were talking about with all of this, is I'm going to put now, because we've been referring to numbers this entire time, this podcast, I'm going to put some numbers in people's minds about how much a Bhangra competition costs and why it's so important to get the results correct. So when I'm applying to a Bhangra competition, I'm paying reg fees, I'm paying hotel costs. In addition to that, I'm paying for travel. I'm paying for all my vardia. I'm paying for my time is money. I'm paying for the time I'm in practice. Okay, not factoring that time is for money. That time is money. And let's just say you're a team like KPGD who came from North Carolina all to Wisconsin for people to put you into context, that's about a 2-hour flight or like a 20-hour drive. You're paying close to $8,000 just to compete at a competition, where your prize money, where the maximum you can make is $2,000. Okay, so just putting these numbers into context, right? That now take that 8,000 and say there's 8 teams there. That means those 8 teams spent $64,000. Now, on top of that, add all the cost of renting the facility, pretty much renting the facility, of renting the mixer facility, getting the food, getting all the whatever, everything ready. You're looking at like a $200,000 bill for a competition in the combination of a team and the competition. It was like cost. So you got to get this shit right. You should be, Umer, like, I think you said this to me. You're like a little scared when you're judging the first time. You should be. You should be nervous because there's a lot of weight on your shoulders. But you got to take that and then morph that into actually becoming a great judge. It's a lot of money. I mean, just to give another even bigger number into context, because I like always tossing this around, SPD probably spent upwards of $30,000 for their Bhangra Arena performance.
How so?
Let that sink
like
in.
I mean, explain it more than that. Like,
what do you mean?
Like, okay, like break it down for me.
Okay, so SPD probably spent $30,000, or I like to say this number, and I always like to put this in context for people to understand why this is important. SPD spent $30,000 at Bhangra Arena when they went there. What does that mean? So their flights, their Vardiya, probably their rent for the facility that they dance in. I'm not even factoring that in. They spent for their Vardiya travel, flights, whatever registration fees if they had to pay them, like all of that stuff summed up probably even over $30,000. So you can understand, I'm not saying validating what people do is correct, but you can understand when someone's upset, how much, not just time and passion, but money goes into this. And now talking about money, I mean, one thing is that, like, I think that competitions can do and do better is getting a senior judge on a panel.
What do you mean by a senior judge, Sahab?
I mean, I think Sid can talk about this because I would consider him a senior judge.
Sid, what would you consider a senior judge, and why is that important?
Just someone that's been around, that has judged, that has experience. It's not someone to push around a panel, but someone to at least guide the panel. So we talk about your experience, Saab, back at NDC when you judged for the first time. We didn't force you in any direction, right? But we were at least there to guide you to understand how to judge, what to look for, how to communicate with the teams, etc. And you were able to take that and go, right? And you had less, I would imagine, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe had less nervousness about the whole situation.
I was pretty nervous. I mean, I didn't shit the bed as hard, right? Like what I said earlier. Like I didn't completely fuck it up, I didn't have people make a podcast about me afterwards, luckily, because I had that though. Dude, if I didn't, I probably would be like getting shit on, honestly.
And the other thing about it though is the newer judges like yourself can learn, right? Hearing someone that has been around, that has done it and can do it better than someone that's never done it before. They're gonna the newer judges are going to learn. They're gonna watch that older judge do it and then learn. This is 100% what happened to me too. Whenever I started judging, listening to other judges around me that had more experience, like listening to whether they gave feedback, listening to the things that they saw, and understanding why they did what they did or put the points the way they did, whatever, right? Every single time you go into it, even now, I still learn from other judges around me of how and why they did it, and it makes me a better judge going forward. But when it comes to a situation like ADZ, and from my own knowledge, it's not like they didn't try to get a senior judge or more experienced judges on that panel. But that's a classic example. We talk about the bug situation. We talk about scoring being not properly done. We talk about contradictions of each other and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Not of each other, but of themselves. That all can get mitigated with a senior type person in the room to be able to take the reins just a little bit, just enough to make sure that everybody's doing the right things. Right? It's not about telling Saab, oh, you're wrong. Right? It's not about that. It's about making sure Saab is thinking the right way, and if this is the conclusions he's coming to, and these are his opinions, so be it. Right? He's a part of the panel. He's not any less or more than me. But him being a newer person, I just want to make sure that He's thinking correctly. He's saying things correctly. And he's communicating correctly.
But Sid, one thing is that problem. I'm telling you, what happens is that competitions, they don't put that money towards judging. I think that's a huge problem.
Yeah, 100%. They do not.
And what I'm talking about is when I'm flying out to your competition, that means I'm paying like $200 to $300 for a flight, and you're not covering that. As someone I'm gonna be like, why would I do that? Why would I put the money out of my pocket to go and provide this responsibility and service to you? And on top of that, if you want to get the more senior judges like Sid you're talking about, those senior judges are probably someone who's a little bit older, is an adult, has other responsibilities in their life. You have to sweeten the pot a little bit by providing that funding. I truly think that if you want to get senior judges, you have to put that money in there. And I remember how I just broke down all the numbers. The numbers I'm talking about are like, you invest like, if you have 3 judges and you have to fly like 2 of them out, you're investing like $500 into a judge. What you can do, I'm gonna tell you a competition. Just don't go and buy all these random fucking shot glasses and tote bags and random little knickknacks here and there. Don't spend $500 to $600 on that crap, and spend the money on a flight for a judge. I am perfectly fine with that. I would much rather you do that than spend that money there. And because, dude, we're talking about this. I mean, you're putting like a competition to run a competition is like $100,000 thing. If it's a big one, that's not even 1% of your budget, but it's like makes or breaks your competition. Because look at this, we keep saying ADZ bad judging. Your name gets put down if you don't get the right judges.
I mean, think about Reina Bhangra. Has that comp happened since Rob 2017? No, it hasn't. Like that. Your comp could have run beautifully. You could have had the best mixer food in the damn world. You could have had like the nicest liaisons ever. But placements come out and they see something real sus, and then they hear about trash from the judges meeting, and then they hear about score sheets. Dude, it doesn't matter what else you did. Like, the judging is what matters. The outcome is what matters. And so if I'm a judge, and I know with Sid, me, Sagar on FCB, I'm assuming with y'all on Fortile, like, when I hear about sus judging at a competition, cough, cough, to any competition that's asked FCB to come and we haven't come, one of the big reasons might be because, oh yeah, I heard judging last year was kind of trash, and so we're not going to go. Because every single year, something sus happens.
It's super important, and I think that it's a reason to come back, man. You know, when there's great judging and you get great feedback, you walk out. Yeah. You might not have a shot glass, as Sahab said, and again, I mentioned this in my posts about speaker systems. I don't have any. Maybe I have like 4 shot glasses from all the competitions I've been to. Maybe I can find them somewhere in all of my belongings. There's so many competitions I don't even know if I got the shot glass.
Bro, I stopped giving a shit about that stuff. Like, I'm like, I'll take the t-shirt because it's like something I can wear while I'm there because I maybe didn't pack enough. But like, I don't give a fuck about the shot glass.
Yeah, and you know, your solution to that competition is just to go and just to get, you know, enough of those little tiny red solo cup looking shot glasses. That's going to cost you what, $15 to cover every single team there. And then everybody can enjoy themselves after the competition, right? Outside of that, you know, it's just a fact of life here. Good judging can make up for so many other things. You could have a terrible liaison. It could be a terrible show experience from the music system being weird. Good judges will bring a team back. They will want to come back because because that meeting resonates so much with them, and they'll walk out of that judges meeting knowing why they won, why they lost, why they did this, and what they need to do, and they will be happy to go enjoy themselves at the after party. They walk out not having a good judges meeting, after party's going to stink for them, right? And maybe not for some random person on the team that's not listening to the judges meeting, but at least on FCB, I mean, everybody on our team wants to know what happens in the judges meeting, and if we walk in and we're like, yo, listen, the judges were really bad, it puts a damper on a lot of things, right? We obviously get up and we enjoy ourselves as much as we can, but it's a whole lot different than even if we get second. If the judging is good and even though we're upset that we got second, we at least walk out and we can enjoy ourselves, knowing that.
Yo, dude, championships at Bhangra, for example.
Great time.
oh my god, like when he came out of the judges meeting, I was like, you know what? No, that's right. Like we completely agree with this. Second was probably like we agree with that. Like, and not even agreeing with that, but they're just like, okay, so this is why. All right, I understand that point. You made a very valid point. Okay, I understand. We go back to our team. We say, yeah, this is what happened. They're like, oh yeah, okay, all right, understood, cool. Now the comp's behind us. We're not just like fuming in a corner like angry old men, just like, we're okay. We can move on, and then we can go and enjoy the rest of our night.
Cool, guys. I mean, I think this was really good. You know, I care about the future and what it's going to look like, and the future judges coming in, especially as I get older and start facing my ability to do anything Bhangra related as it is on its way out.
Lies, all lies.
Dude, at some point, marriage, kids.
At some point when you're 75, you might be done.
That might be when I get back into it.
Yo, 30 years from now, let's all come back.
But no, seriously, like I hope, whatever questions anybody has, please reach out, please post on BTF. I don't care. We can start a discussion about anything that we said today. It means a lot to us. We've invested so much time till we care about it. It's very passionate. The whole Bhangra circuit means a lot to us. So we care, and that's why we're doing this.
All right. Any last comments from anybody?
No, I don't.
So,
like, comment, subscribe to Burger Sing on Instagram. That's if you want some burger knowledge.
What kind of burgers?
Subscribe to that guy.
What kind of burgers?
all right.
Or is there a follow-up?